All right. Well, welcome everybody to the newest uh, presentation for our outdoor safety and first aid series. And today we're going to be going over some outdoor hydration and nutrition, how to make sure that you're well fed and well hydrated out on the trail, um, so that your activities can be successful. Um, I know I throw these disclaimers up for every single presentation I do, but this one is particularly good to go over again because again, if you're starting something new, like new exercise routine, new nutrition, new diet, and you have any pre-existing conditions, you should talk with your medical provider. Um, this is just informational for personal use. This is not medical advice. And if I mention any specific products, which I will, I don't have any financial ties to them. My background for those of you, I know that many of you in the audience have been here before, but I have been a PA for actually it's 17 years, not 15. I need to update this with a strong interest in wilderness medicine, and I volunteer for some outdoor groups here in the area. So what we're going to be talking about today is first we're just going to kind of go over kind of what happens when we do start exercising and when we do start moving, and then we're going to talk about nutrition hydration before a hike, during a hike, and after a hike. So exercise 101, we're going to take an entire exercise physiology semester and squish it into 5 minutes. So basically what's going to start happening, you get out on the trail and you start moving. And so your skeletal muscles start firing, and they need a few things to fire. They need energy in the form of carbohydrates and fats and proteins, and they also need some electrolytes like sodium and calcium. And then your brain finally gets the picture of, hey, we're moving kind of at a quicker pace than I'm used to. Maybe something really bad's happening, like a tiger is chasing me. Because even though we know what's going on, our brain is very primitive in this respect. So it goes, all right, time to activate the fight or flight response. Even though, again, we know we're fine. And so some things start to happen. Our heart starts to beat faster. This needs a few things like oxygen. It needs different levels of sodium, potassium, and calcium. Um, and so as it beats, it's obviously going to deliver more oxygen to the organs that it needs to. It's also going to deliver carbon dioxide away from those organs to the lungs to get blown up. And at the same time, the blood vessels coming from the heart are going to dilate not only to deliver more oxygen, but also to release heat that our muscles are generating. Then our lungs, we're going to breathe faster depending on how in shape we are. Like me, I breathe very, very fast because I am not in shape. But then again, that's to blow off carbon dioxide and bring in oxygen to the body. Because as we build up carbon dioxide and lactic acid is another thing our muscles produce, the pH of our blood starts getting shifted. So breathing is one of the ways that we start to bring that back to normal. Then our skin, again, blood vessels are dilating, we're releasing heat, but we also start sweating. And everybody sweats a little bit differently, but sweat is one of the ways that we maintain a normal body temperature. Sweat, as we probably all know, does contain salt, contains sodium, and a little bit of potassium. Um, Also, underneath the skin, this nice yellow stuff are the fat cells. These things start breaking down when we're starting to do longer term, low to moderate intensity exercise. Our liver starts getting involved because in our liver we have these long chains of sugar called glycogen, and they start breaking down as another source of energy. Our kidneys, we don't really need to pee when we're running from a tiger, so they stop filtering too much and they start actually reabsorbing more water, and they try to do their best with sodium. And then lastly, our gut, again, because we do not need to digest or poop while we are running from a tiger, our blood flow gets decreased to your gut. That's actually why when people exercise and they eat, the whole nut, don't eat within like 30 minutes of swimming or whatever, you get cramp. It's because the blood isn't getting there, so your body can't effectively digest it, so you start cramping up. It should say if anybody in the audience has any questions at any point, just feel free to yell out and stop. All right. So with that all being said, the nutrients that we're going to focus on, water is considered a nutrient. And then we have our carbohydrates, which are not evil, and we'll go over that. Proteins, fats, and then a couple of electrolytes like sodium and potassium. Calcium and magnesium are others that you might see in different electrolyte drinks and energy bars and stuff. They're less important, especially if you're only doing something for a day or two, or even for a few hours, but longer term, you do start worrying about calcium and magnesium. All right. So before you go out on your hike, all right, what are we doing? So we're going to talk about what we should be doing just basically on a day-to-day basis. So there is going to be a overview of new regular nutrition here, but also what to do immediately before. So water or fluids. The average daily intake that we need for guys is almost a gallon of water or fluids a day, which is the most surprising thing that I found doing preparing for this. Women, it's about 3/4 of a gallon of water or fluid. And we do get some fluid from our diet, but it's only about 20% depending on what you're eating. Obviously, if you're vegetarian or vegan, you're probably eating a little bit more. But that still leaves about 3 to 2.25 liters, or 3/4 of a gallon that everybody needs every day. So I'm terrible at this. I'm sure the majority of America is bad at this because we're not very good at drinking fluids. And we love our sodas, our caffeine, our alcohol. Unfortunately, dehydrates us. And then we get into our nutrition. Now, people should recognize this. This is the good old-fashioned food pyramid that came out in 1995. The USDA was trying to give us a visual representation of what we should be eating. And this was king, 1992. And this was king up until 2005. We kind of all remember our grains at the bottom and our fruits and veggies and using the oils and sugars sparingly. And then in 2005, they adapted it a little bit. The serving sizes were about the same, but they did add this guy on the left here to symbolize we should be exercising. And that lasted only 6 years until 2011. We got the My Plate. This was just, again, trying to give us a percentage of what our plates are supposed to look like for each meal. Half fruits and vegetables, quarter grains, quarter protein, and some dairy on the side. And this is where my presentation was finished up until about 2 weeks ago. And the new pyramid came out, so I had to make kind of adjust things on the fly. So this came out literally last year, like in December of 2025. And kind of bringing back the pyramid, but reverse. And for what it's worth, it's not a bad pyramid. And we'll go over serving sizes and things like that. The major things that people had problems with it, you may have heard on the news, was the picture sizes for certain things, especially for like meats and whole milk and cheese. These are more saturated fats. So some nutritionists had some words about that. I do like how the fruits and vegetables are very large, and they kind of just shoved whole grains at the bottom here. So I wish that they would be in this a little bit more equal, but I digress. But yes, this is the new food pyramid. And if you want to read the actual paper that went along with it, it's only about 4 pages. Realfood.gov is where this is from. So to quickly go over what are the current recommendations. 3 servings of vegetables, which is either a cup of raw cooked, frozen, or canned vegetables, and they make it kind of easy. 1 tomato, 1 ear of corn, 1 avocado, or 2 cups of salad greens. So you can pretty much get all your servings in 1 salad if you wanted to. Fruits, about 2 servings. Again, cup of raw cooked or canned fruit. I don't know who decided it was 22 grapes specifically or 8 large strawberries, but that's what they came up with. Half a cup of dried fruit, I should note that these recommendations are for a normal sized adult who burns about 2,000 calories at baseline. There are some calculators that you can find out what your basal metabolic rate is. You may need more, less. There is a chart that you can follow. And again, this is like your normal 2,000 calorie a day. You obviously should adjust this for activity level, things like that. Um, in terms of juices, because in the My Plate they did have juices on here. They don't recommend juices unless they're no sugar added, like 100% fruit or 100% vegetable, no sugar added juices. And they say it's about a cup, an 8 ounce glass for one serving. Grains, they prefer the whole grains like your whole wheat, your ancient grains like farro, oatmeal, 2 to 4 servings of those. One sandwich is going to get you all the greens or you might need for a day or 2 sandwiches. Protein, the war on protein is over apparently. But as you can see, it doesn't take much to get your daily intake of protein from one standard American hamburger. 3 times 4 is 12, so it's a 3/4 of a pound of ground beef, and you're done. Um, but nuts and oils, cooked beans, they really want people to like not just eat as much. But it's just 3 ounces for one serving. Dairy, 3 servings. They've been making a big push for whole milk as opposed to skim milk, and really that's more for kids. Kids need whole milk because their brain's developing. They need more fat for brain development. As adults, all of us here in the audience and up here should be probably drinking 1 or 2% or skim milk, not whole milk. An ounce of hard cheese is not that much. It's probably a cube. All right. I know because I love my cheese too. And then the most controversial thing is the fats. So 4.5 servings, as you can see, a serving is a very small amount of fat. So seed oils are not bad. They have the healthy fats that you need to help lower cholesterol, like olive oil, flaxseed. They do say in the recommendations that you can get healthy fats from butter and beef tallow, but those are saturated fats, which are associated with increased risk of stroke, heart attack, coronary artery disease. So they do recommend in the actual printed guidelines less than 10%. So you can have your butter and your precious beef tallow, but they prefer the saturated fats like that.
So looking at that, it says 1 teaspoon of butter. It's 4.5 servings. Is the teaspoon 1 serving?
Yes. A teaspoon, like if you look at so when you get a stick of butter, and then each line is a tablespoon, so it's a third of that. But one of those is 1 serving of that. Now, again, if you look at like fish, for example, like a salmon has fat. So you actually have to take into account when you're getting fat from the salmon or the nuts that the nuts that you're eating, things like that. So there is a lot of overlap. It looks a little complicated, but honestly, I think the fact that they mark out it's 1 teaspoon I've actually started measuring out like when I'm like making an egg in the morning, I'm measuring out a teaspoon because it is a lot less than what you think. And you actually don't need that much, especially in pumps. So I'm actually glad that they signaled that out. All right. So enough about what we should be doing every day. Let's talk about prior to I know I say hike, but this is outdoor activity or any activity really, even if you're just going to the gym. So we need to prime the pump, so to speak, when we are going out to do any sort of activity. So we need to drink some water. So a good 16-ounce glass of water or some sort of fluid. It can be orange juice, it can be apple cider, any of that stuff. And then a small meal. I'm guilty of, I really like my breakfast sandwiches before hikes. It's just kind of a tradition that I do. But I found that as I've got those things don't digest very quickly, and I feel like a pit in my stomach. So we need something with carbs. We need something with some protein in it. So like here, toast with peanut butter, great. Oatmeal or cereal with banana, great. Small breakfast sandwich. This is like An English muffin, egg, cheese. That's what I do now. But you can, you can put bacon on it and stuff. And then as we're driving to the hike, um, we're doing another small bit of water and then another small snack that has carbs in it. Because the thing that our body's going to use first as we start our activity is sugar, because that's the thing that is immediately available. And eventually it'll start using fats. Eventually it'll start using protein. So we need sugar first. So that's why we need to focus on carbohydrates initially. All right. Now we're out on the trail. We're moving. We're sweating. We're exerting ourselves. Hydration. Um, we should be drinking 6 to 12 ounces every 20 minutes of exercise. That doesn't mean you have to stop every 20 minutes, but you need to use this as calculation. So like a liter of fluid every hour, almost, depending on a few things, whether your hike is more strenuous, the temperature, you yourself, how much you sweat. These are all the things you have to take into account. And one of the questions, especially on like hiker pages, is like, what am I drinking? Do I drink just regular old water? Water is life, right? Or there's a lot of drink mixes out there, that are supposed to be good for you while you're exercising, like Gatorade, Pedialyte. These are two pretty popular powders that you can add to water. So before we talk about what's the best thing to drink, it's important to talk about sweat. On average, we are losing about a gram of sodium every hour, and that's about a half a teaspoon of table salt. It's worth of sodium. We're losing some potassium, and we're losing anywhere between a half to 1.5 liters of fluid. So that's, a quart of water. Some of us, like me, are on the upper end. If anyone ever goes hiking with me, I sweat a lot. And then there's some people who don't sweat very often at all. So these are nutrition facts from those four things that I had up here. So the calories we're not really going to care too much about. We'll talk about calories in a couple slides. But what I typically look at is what's the sodium, and I also look at the potassium too. So Gatorade, all right. So if we're supposed to be drinking, or we're supposed to be replacing, and again, we have to remember that we don't have to get to all of our sodium and all of our electrolytes from fluids, but Gatorade's got some sodium, it's got some potassium. Element, which I don't like the taste of because it's sweetened with stevia, but that's just me. Get you all the sodium you need and then some. Potassium, we're doing pretty good too. So that actually does kind of fit what you're losing. Scratch, this is another drink mix. Less sodium. We got a little bit, a tiny bit of potassium here, and then Pedialyte. This makes sense because Pedialyte is what you're supposed to give to your puking kids, because they're losing potassium and sodium too. They got a great amount of potassium, chloride too, which is something you lose when you vomit, and sodium. So you can kind of look to see what, not only what tastes good, but what's in it. So the right answer is whatever you want. There is no good answer. As long as you are drinking fluids, it does not really matter. But it is important to remember that you are still losing electrolytes. So if you just want to drink plain water, which is completely fine, you should be supplementing it in the food you're eating. I personally, when I go out, I actually take a bottle of Gatorade and I add salt. I add about a quarter teaspoon of salt to my Gatorade, and it doesn't make it salty. And just gives me that little extra because I know that I lose a lot of sodium because I sweat a lot. But you can try that. You can cut it with water. You can actually add just sugar and water, sugar and salt to water and make it taste halfway decent. That's what the World Health Organization does for cholera patients. But yeah, or another thing I'll do is I have Country Time lemonade mix. I'll put it in one of these and I'll add half teaspoon of salt. And that'll do it. Again, doesn't make it salty, but just gives me enough calories, gives me some sodium. I did buy potassium salts, so I do add potassium myself, but I don't expect anyone else to go out and do that. And the other important thing is, if we're having to drink about a liter's worth of water every hour, depending if you're going out for multiple hours, you may not want to carry around a gallon of water because a gallon of water weighs
7 pounds.
8 pounds. Yeah, a pint of pounds the world around is what my dad always taught me. So 8 pounds. That's a lot to carry all at once. So either planning if you're going by some like a hut, or if you're passing by some stores, or if you're going by some water sources, remember that you can treat water, which will be the topic of this month's presentation, is water treatment. Then we have food. Eating on the trail is awesome. There is nothing better than sitting down and eating literally anything. And if you eat these things, especially when it comes to these prepared meals at home, these taste awful at home. But if you just hike like 5 or 6 hours, this is the best thing you've ever eaten.
It's like MREs.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, these literally came from MREs. Like these are just MREs made better. And there are so many good ones out there. Mountain House is just like the cheapest one. But so when we're thinking about food, again, we're thinking about we need things with fats, we need things with carbohydrates, and some electrolytes. So what I bring typically is I love Fritos. This is my like I could eat a bag of Fritos just standing here right now talking with you. I love Oreos too. But trail mix is pretty ubiquitous on the trail. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. This is probably your perfect hiking food. You got carbs, you got fat, you got proteins, you got salt, you got more carbs. It just gets squished typically. It's usually about that then when you're done with it. But beef jerky, Snickers. This is what gets AT hikers from Maine. Sorry, from Georgia to Maine. They just live on Snickers bars. If Alex was here, she'd tell you that. Yeah. So when we are eating, depending on our body weight, the strenuousness, our pace, pack weight, we're burning anywhere from 400 to 800 calories an hour. If you are doing outdoor activity as a weight loss, you can use this to help calculate like how much you're burning. But just remember that you still need to finish your activity. So don't starve yourself on hikes. It is not fun to not go without food. Again, we talked about carbohydrates, protein, electrolytes, and food is a great place to get fluids. Things like apples, pears, fruits are a great thing. The other important thing to remember is remember we talked about the blood flow to your gut is reduced and you're in fight or flight mode. And people don't need to eat when they're running from a tiger. So typically your appetite is suppressed. So when you are choosing what to bring to eat, make sure it's stuff that you really want to eat. Don't if you can't stand the taste of rice cakes, don't bring rice cakes on your hike because you will not eat, you will be even less inclined to eat them. That's why I bring, for lack of a better term, food that's maybe not the best for you, because it at least gets energy into me. All right, because my goal is to finish the hike, not eat healthy. Which sounds bad coming from a medical professional, but honestly, like you need energy and electrolytes more than you need to eat healthy on the trail. Especially if you ever watch or read anything on like Appalachian trail hikers, they eat terribly. Like because they're just hiking for 3 or 4 months and they're just trying to get 2,000 miles, and they'll worry about dieting afterwards because they're burning.
Got to feed the machine.
Exactly. They're burning 3,000 to 4,000 calories, like more than their base. They're burning 6,000 calories a day just on their own. So they're eating machines too. They can put away a lot of food. So that's the things to remember for while you're on your activity, your hike. So just because we stop doesn't mean we have to stop remembering hydration and nutrition. So hydration, once you finish, your body has to actually come down. It's not a light switch, it's a dimmer. So it slowly comes down. You're still going to you're going to start repairing your muscles. You're going to continue to perhaps sweat. Your heart's still going to be working really hard. You're still going to use fluid. So we need to keep on drinking fluid. Exercise physiologists do say if you're able to weigh yourself, more like if you go out for a run and back, not starve yourself after coming back from a hike. For every pound you lose, because out on trail, you're not losing fat weight, you're losing water weight. The fat loss comes later. You need 2 to 3 cups of water for every pound you lose. All right. And they do say avoid alcohol or caffeine because that's obviously a diuretic, although a post hike beer tastes great. Just be aware that post exercise alcohol hits you much harder than if you're just sitting around after like work or something. So just be aware of that. And then when we're talking about refueling, there's this thing in physiology called the anabolic window, where your muscles are more likely to pull in carbs and proteins for energy for the next time you have to use them. Some people say it's 30 to 60 minutes. There's other evidence that say it can be hours later, but just it's the most important thing to remember is that we do need to eat after we're done to actually again stock up the battery for next time, because that your muscles get stronger each time you use them from like micro tears and stuff, but they need energy to release the next time they're used. So we're going to be focusing on proteins, fats, and carbs. And here are some great examples of things to eat after. I know that I told you, in the pre-hike, don't eat hamburgers that often, but I mean, you got protein and fat, you got carbs, you do technically have vegetables, you have some dairy in there. Maybe don't eat the fries with it. But again, this is great. I listened to this podcast, they were talking about chocolate milk as the perfect post-hike food because it's got fluids, it's got carbs and the sugar, it's got protein, it's got fat. So this is actually something I do after my hikes. So I get chocolate milk somewhere. You can have a nice roast chicken and veggies and stuff. And this was another thing that I saw online. Somebody said tuna fish sandwiches are also one of the more perfect foods. Because again, you got carbs, proteins, fats in the tuna, fats in the mayonnaise. You can add some celery in there if you like the crunch. But you don't like tuna fish sandwiches? No.
I love them.
No.
Yeah.
I had a tuna fish sandwich. I had a tuna melt today.
She'll eat octopus.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
That's it.
And then you can do healthy options. You can make smoothies if you want.
Everything else looks good.
Yeah, everything else looks good. But yeah, I thought it was like last year I listened to a podcast and they were talking about chocolate milk being the perfect post hike food. So in summary, we all should just be eating and drinking healthy, just as a general rule. We're going to hydrate and eat a small meal with carbs and proteins prior to going on our hike or activity. We have to remember to eat and drink regularly on our hikes. That's something that is easier said than done. But if you focus on it, it's important. And then afterwards, we're going to be trying to rebuild and refuel for the next time with our carbs, proteins, and fats. Any questions? There's a clap track in here.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So it might be outside of the scope of this, but what would you say is nutrition wise something that most Americans don't get enough of? And then what would your recommendation be to get enough of it?
Water is
Really?
water is probably the biggest one. Yeah. Like even me, like I'm terrible at drinking water. I bring an Nalgene to work. I probably only drink 2, and that's 2 liters of water. That's half of what I need. So I would say water is probably the number one, honestly. Because again, we like our caffeine and we like our alcohol in the United States. And again, I'm not a nutritionist, but obviously the American diet is full of simple sugars, simple carbs, and fats. So we probably need less of that.
Yeah.
More veggies.
Yeah.
And fruits. Yep. I'm actually post hike right now. I should have drank. We're all right. So.
Where did you hike today?
There's a set of trails at the bottom of my hill at Pinnacle Hill. It's just